Hello, friend. Welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, don't skip just yet because today we're diving deep into OCD in the DSM-5, aka how the modern world of psychology understands and defines OCD clinically. This isn't just about I'm so OCD because I like things neat, spoiler alert, that's not OCD. We're going to learn how OCD is classified, what the diagnostic criteria are, and why it's crucial to understand the difference between OCD and other mental disorders. So grab some snacks, take a deep breath, and let's get into it. Alright, before we get into the technical stuff, let's first meet the Bible of psychologists and psychiatrists, DSM-5, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. This manual is published by the American Psychiatric Association and is the international standard for diagnosing mental disorders. It describes all mental disorders based on symptoms, duration, intensity, and how much they impact a person's life. Why does DSM-5 matter? Because without this standard, diagnoses would be all over the place. One psychologist might say you have anxiety, another might say depression, even though the symptoms are the same. With DSM-5, diagnoses are more consistent, scientifically valid, and grounded. It also helps guide research, effective treatment, and even insurance coverage for mental health. And for OCD in particular, DSM-5 brought major changes that help us understand it more accurately. In the past, OCD was considered part of anxiety disorders, but now, it has its own home. OCD has its own category in DSM-5. Yep, that's right. In DSM-5, OCD and its cousins officially got their own space. They're now grouped under obsessive-compulsive and related disorders. This isn't just a name change. It reflects a deeper understanding of the condition's characteristics. Previously, OCD was lumped under anxiety disorders because a lot of its symptoms involve fear or anxiety. But it turns out the mechanism is quite different. For example, in generalized anxiety disorder, GD, a person fears something that could realistically happen, like losing a job. But in OCD, the fear comes from intrusive, bizarre thoughts, like being terrified of hurting someone close even though you'd never want to. By moving OCD into its own category, experts can develop more targeted treatments. This shift also impacts research and clinical approaches. In this new category, OCD has some neighbors: body dysmorphic disorder, obsession over imagined physical flaws, hoarding disorder, difficulty discarding items, trichotillomania, hair pulling and excoriation, skin picking. What they all have in common is the presence of obsessive thoughts or urges followed by compulsive behavior. Now let's break down the two key terms in OCD, obsessions and compulsions. A lot of people still confuse these, so let's clear it up. Obsessions are intrusive, repetitive thoughts, urges, or images that are unwanted and extremely distressing. For example, what if I accidentally hurt my child, or if I don't repeat this prayer, something bad will happen. These thoughts aren't just annoying, they make the person feel anxious, guilty, or even disgusted with themselves. And the kicker is they know the thoughts are irrational, but they still can't stop them. Compulsions, on the other hand, are the brain's way of trying to reduce the anxiety caused by the obsession. They come in all forms: hand washing, checking the stove repeatedly, arranging things symmetrically, or even mental compulsions like silently repeating words or prayers. So it's not always visible behavior. Compulsions can happen inside the mind too. What makes OCD a vicious cycle is this: obsession, anxiety, compulsion, temporary relief, back to obsession. The more you perform the compulsion, the stronger the cycle becomes. The brain starts to think, oh, washing hands worked to make the anxiety go away, better keep doing it. And so, the person with OCD gets trapped in a loop that's nearly impossible to break without professional help. DSM-5 doesn't play around when it comes to diagnosing OCD. There are 4 major criteria that must be met for a clinical diagnosis. First, the individual must experience obsessions, compulsions, or both. The obsessions must cause real psychological distress, not just occasional weird thoughts. Second, the compulsive behavior or mental rituals are done to neutralize or reduce the anxiety caused by the obsession, even if there's no logical connection. For example, repeating the word safe in your head to prevent your family from getting into a car accident. Third, these behaviors must be time-consuming, more than 1 hour per day, or cause significant disruption in social life, work, or other important areas. Imagine having to wash your hands 30 times before every meal. That eats up time, energy, and peace of mind. Fourth, the symptoms must not be better explained by another condition. For example, someone might look like they have OCD, but actually be experiencing psychosis or drug effects. That's why proper diagnosis has to be done by professionals using interviews and clinical assessments. DSM-5 also introduces specifiers additional information. Does the person realize their thoughts are irrational, good, poor, or absent insight, and is OCD accompanied by tics? These details help tailor treatment plans for better outcomes. Subtypes of OCD. A lot of people think OCD is just about being clean. But in reality, OCD wears many masks. Let's look at some common subtypes. First, contamination OCD. This one's the most well-known. The person feels threatened by germs, dirt, or toxic substances. But it's not just grossed out, they fear serious consequences, like catching a deadly disease or committing a sin. They might wash their hands until they're raw. Second, checking OCD, where someone constantly checks if the stove is off, the door is locked, or the lights are out. The fear isn't just forgetfulness. It's about catastrophic consequences, like if I don't check 7 times, the house will burn down. Third, symmetry and order OCD. These folks feel extreme tension if things aren't symmetrical, aligned, or follow a certain pattern. If you're annoyed by a crooked pen, that's fine. But if you can't eat unless your utensils are aligned just right, that's a red flag. Fourth, harm OCD, where the person is haunted by thoughts of harming others, even though they have no intention to do so. They may avoid knives or driving altogether, fearing they'll lose control and hurt someone. Lastly, there's taboo OCD, sexual, religious, or aggressive obsessions that go against the person's values. These are some of the most distressing, because they make the sufferer feel dirty, ashamed, and often too afraid to seek help, even though they are deeply disturbed by the thoughts and don't want to act on them. How is OCD diagnosed? Diagnosing OCD isn't just a quick Q&A session. It's a deep process handled by mental health professionals. First comes a comprehensive clinical interview. When did the symptoms start? What are the thoughts like? How often are the rituals performed? And how much do they interfere with daily life? Then, clinicians may use tools like the YBCS, Yale-Brown Obsessive Compulsive Scale, to measure severity. This isn't just about how often you wash your hands, but how much the symptoms distress and impair you. Next, they rule out other medical conditions, substance use, or mental disorders that could explain the symptoms. For instance, OCD can resemble autism spectrum disorders or schizophrenia, so it's crucial to get the diagnosis right. A proper diagnosis is the foundation for effective therapy, so this process can't be rushed or based on a vibe. Alright, so why should we even care about DSM-5? Because education is the best antidote to stigma. There are still people who say, oh come on, they're just super tidy, or stop overthinking, it's not a big deal. But someone with OCD is already fighting hard against their own mind, and comments like that only make it worse. By understanding DSM-5, we can tell the difference between habits and disorders. We can be better friends, partners, family members, or just better humans. And if you're someone experiencing OCD symptoms, this knowledge is your first step toward help, not for self-diagnosing, but for validating your experience and realizing you deserve support. So, OCD isn't just about being neat or clean. It's a complex, exhausting mental disorder that can seriously limit someone's life. But the good news? OCD can be treated. With the right therapy, strong support, and informed understanding, recovery is possible. Very possible. If you relate to this or know someone who's struggling, let's educate ourselves together. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you found this helpful. And as always, take care of your mind, take care of your heart, and remember, self-compassion isn't selfish. It's self-care.